I can never rest well in hotels. I guess that's somewhat of an understatement. I can never sleep well in general, but hotels were the worst. Just the idea that the previous occupant of this bed is a complete stranger was yucky in my mind, but that's beside the point. What I'm getting at is how this lack of sleep in hotels changed my life. We were spending Christmas in a terrible hotel and not with the family. Great, don't get me wrong, it's not like I didn't enjoy the all you can eat buffet. Having soggy hash browns and grits for Christmas Eve dinner, of course. The first snow of the season had to cancel our flight down to Virginia. It was Christmas Eve, and I was trying to sleep in this bleach saturated room, my mind wondering what happened in here to cause such an excessive amount of bleach needed. The room was nothing out of the ordinary two beds, one for me and my dad, and another for my sister and mom, a bathroom, and a stained microwave that looked in need of good dusting. Somehow, I escaped the room and the stench of bleach into the dreamless sleep. Waking up, I could tell it was an early morning. My dad was next to me, he's snoring, and he usually wakes up before 4 a.m. That's when it hit me. It's Christmas, and I was about to let this bad fortune ruin my favorite holiday. Looking across the bed at the clock to check the time is when I noticed it. The silhouette of a man about 6'3" across the room, staring at my mom's sleep. Still half asleep and caught up in the moment, I couldn't help thinking of Santa Claus. I realized how silly the thought was, and horror soon filled my head. I choked back a screech. I knew I couldn't let him see me awake, so I quietly put my head back down, pretending to sleep. My mind was racing, some was in my room, and I couldn't do anything. I was a scrawny 16-year-old, and this man looked built like an ox. I wondered if I could wake my dad up in time, but I knew that wouldn't work. He slept like a rock. A bucket of water couldn't get him up fast enough. I was practically in tears. I'd never felt so helpless. For a second time, I choked back a scream. He was standing next to me. I could feel and hear his repulsive breath on my face. It smelled like he'd been eating rotten meat for a week now, with no thought to brush his teeth. If he didn't know I was awake, surely he did now. Seeing my face was contorted in fear. The breathing stopped, and I couldn't help the sigh of relief. I would have kicked myself, but there was no need. I heard the room door open and closed. I launched out of bed. Nothing in the room was in disarray, and my family was still asleep. That couldn't have been a dream. I couldn't have imagined it. Feeling awake as ever, a horrible idea popped in my head, and before I could push it away, I was pulling the door open, glancing back to the door to memorize the room number. I saw the giant spray-painted black X on the door. Had I seen this before the prior experience, I probably would have thought it was just some stupid kids. I knew better, but not enough to know what it was for. My heart skipped a beat. There he was turning the corner at the end of the hall. Why am I doing this? I thought to myself. I tailed him down to the parking lot. He was nowhere in sight. 1 minute, he's walking out to the lobby. The next, he's gone. Realizing how cold it is outside in paper-thin pajamas, I returned to the lobby. No one was around. Strange. I could swear there's usually an icy air adrenaline wearing off. I realized how stupid and rash my actions had been. He could have killed me. I cast myself back to the floor, back up the stairs. I knew something was wrong. When I got to my floor, the door to my room was wide open. I hadn't left it that way, right? I walked inside, and after a quick search of the room, I determined it's safe, and my family was still asleep. I locked the door and got back into bed. Though I didn't sleep for the rest of the night, I listened to my dad get up, and eventually my mom followed. But I still pretended to sleep. A few hours passed, then my parents got my sister and me up. We got into the car and made our way back to the airport. Digging through my bag to grab my iPod led me to finding of something that hadn't been there the previous day. A note that simply had the 5 words. I still think about it to this day. I knew you were awake. It's now been 2 months since the hotel experience. I'm still scared for my life, and it gets worse every day. The note I found wasn't the only one. I still received them. He first suspected that they were going to eat him when he noticed the clear absence of Christmas scents. It wasn't a conscious thought, but a growing uneasiness within him. Normally, if a family invites you for Christmas dinner, the house would be filled with delightful smells, with the yearly feast, roast turkey, honey-glazed vegetables, awesome wine, or brandy-covered Christmas pudding. However, none of these were present. The table was set in this particularly gloomy Christmas. While snow was usually welcomed during this festive time, the biting cold and frost made it challenging for families to connect, and travel, especially for the elderly, was nearly impossible due to the fear of slipping on ice. The Cardona family, known for their dedication to help the elderly, decided to host an elderly gentleman named Socio Marrero. The Cardinals were admired for their commitment to the community, but behind the loving facade had a sinister tradition. Every Christmas, they invited a guest, welcomed them warmly, engaged in cheerful conversation, and then, by the fire, the guests were fatally attacked and eaten as a part of dark family tradition. Timmy, the youngest at 5 or 6, looked forward to it the most. He had a voracious appetite. Camilla, his 10-year-old sister, was more reserved but equally enthusiastic about the family tradition. Ben, the local police chief, adeptly covered up their annual feast, while Lucy, a relative, was eager to maintain the Christmas tradition. Their guests were typically lonely elders, forgotten by society. The Cardinals justified their action to their children, claiming it was a kindness to end the victims' misery. This year, they were especially excited about hosting Socio Marrero, an Eastern European man, and the prospect of indulging in exotic meat. The Cardinals had encountered Marrero weeks earlier when Ben noticed his name on the home help list provided by the local church. Volunteers received names and addresses of local isolated pensioners without family for the holiday season. During that joyful time of year, with concerns that frailer residents might struggle with the harsh cold, church committee members visited a lonely individuals, offering a friendly air, a helping hand, and hearty food. They attended to the poorest on the list. The names rarely changed, and sadly, one person on the list would pass away each year. As a respected community member and high-ranking police officer, Ben informed the church of a fictitious family member claiming the deceased had moved or had long lost relative. The Cardinals, influential in the community, avoided scrutiny due to their apparent dedication, ensuring each Christmas meal was not attended by an active church or community member. This year, the Cardinals had intended to invite Lucy Windridge, but her demise in the summer led them to look for an alternative guest. Sergio Marrero, an 86-year-old with emphysema and no known family, seemed perfect. Ben found Marrero delightful, sharing colorful stories, particularly war tales. The family believed that consuming an intelligent, well-traveled person transmitted strength, a belief ingrained in their unseen yet influential family tradition. Unlike previous victims, Marrero was tall, slightly hunched, with a crooked nose and an intense stare, although the frail, kind demeanor left Ben confident that the family would enjoy consuming his unique character. The family's long-standing tradition held that consuming another family transmitted strengths, and Marrero, with his fondness for the past, enjoyed their company. Touchingly, Ben invited Marrero to the family's Christmas table. Despite his extreme frailty and emphysema, Marrero was assisted by Ben and Camila. The Cardinal home was adorned with colorful but crass Christmas decoration, showcasing the family's popularity. The table, beautifully laid, seemed unusual, with an empty catterpiece plate catching Marrero's attention. As the evening progressed, Lucy's expression unsettled Marrero, resembling a conspiratorial smirk passed between her and the children. Moments later, Ben appeared with a jagged carving knife and long fork, resembling a butcher's implement. The absence for a turkey became conspicuous. They sat for over an hour. replenishing Mariro's drink with enthusiasm, showing concerns for his moments of uncomfortable breathing. However, it was a strange concern, as they gleefully asked him questions and listened to his life stories, building up to an unsettling climax. The interest and concern during Mariro's war stories seemed distant, merely skin deep. The cardinals exchanged conspiratorial glances not because of the content, but simple fact that Mariro was a foreigner. The absence of food and its mention was unsettling, and Ben's stolen glances at an antique clock betrayed a countdown unrelated to the kitchen. Camilla stopped smiling first, no longer listening to anecdotes. Timmy abandoned the act, grinning menacingly, gripping serrated steak knife. The alarming focus was on Mariro's wrinkled neck. With a last glance at the clock, Ben ceased being a jovial host, running his fingers along the carving knife with anger and lust. As the clock chimed, Lucy exposed her cold-hearted nature. When the clock chimed thrice, the cardinals rose, sharp knives in hand, chanting a weird phrase. After the third chime, they felt silence. The old man's wheezing intensified as the twisted family surrounded him. As Sergio questioned his fate, the final chime echoed and Lucy slit his throat. The parents joined in, watching his pride as Camilla and Timmy savagely attacked. The frenzy ceased as the children tired. Timmy drove his steak knife into old man's hand, embedding it in the table. The family embraced, rejoicing in what they saw as fantastic Christmas game. Arms around each other, they laughed, commenting on Mariro's stories. As they turned to each other, the laughter dimed, and they shared a blood-covered family moment. Amidst the blood-stained faces, one person continued laughing loudly, revealing the bizarre truth in the moment of horror. It was Mr. Mariro, sitting covered in blood, his head tilted back and the deep cut in his throat wide open. The dinner guest laughed loud and strong, a laugh which was both the young and old. His head arched forward as he pulled Timmy's steak knife out of his hand, dropping it on the floor. Camilla screamed as Lucy hid behind Ben. What they thought to be a corpse now stared at them as they all had stared it with a singular purpose. Timmy began to be himself, and Tryer's previously retracted fangs cracked through the old man's upper gum, revealing a serrated and terrifying grin. As he rose to the feet, Lucy fainted, and with both hunched and aged, now gone, the cardinal's guest loomed tall and dark. Before them, his eyes piercing, telling tales of countries and decades and of centuries of existence. Sergio